Hey guys, how you doing? Welcome back to Characters Explained, a series where I cover characters from the game Battle for Neighborville to ultimately decide if they're worth trying or not. And in today's video, we're covering a pretty controversial plant, Citron. So without any further ado, let's get right into it. So Citron's background is a pretty interesting one. In fact, it actually goes back further than Garden Warfare 2's release, all the way to the release of Far Future in PVZ 2. In this world, Citron was first introduced to us, and he's a pretty powerful plant in this game, but his entry in PVZ 2 doesn't really reflect what he does in a shooter game, so we'll just move on. Citron is a pretty varied character in the franchise, but most of his appearances show us that he's a tank. So do his stats in BFN reflect this? Well, let's find out. Citron is a part of the defense lineup on plants, which is to be expected. Keep this in mind when we cover his damage because this is important. He has 200 HP and his primary, the juice cannon, fires 3 pellets to deal 3 damage each, 4 for a crit, and if they all connect they deal 9 damage total, with the crit damage total being 12. His ammo count is 50 and his RPM is 400. Not too shabby, though this primary can be quite inaccurate due to it being a shotgun and he actually can't aim it. Yeah, so with Citron being a defense character, PopCap actually gave him a pretty unique way of using his shield. Compared to All-Star, his is actually built in. He just needs to use his ADS button to access it. This shield is 600 health in total, and when it's not in use, it regenerates itself slowly. Think of this shield like it's an infinite from PVZ2, but you can use it whenever you want. This shield plays a massive part in Citron's kit, and there's also something else to consider for this character before we move on, his sprint. So, like Engineer, Citron can run in all directions, which is neat, but the way he does this is by rolling up in a ball, and this allows his hitbox to briefly become smaller. So yes, this tank character can roll up into a ball, and he also has a shield he can deactivate and reactivate whenever he pleases. How did PopCap get away with this? Okay, but jokes aside, we should probably move on to his abilities, and we'll start out with EM Peach. This ability acts exactly like the EM Peach from PVZ2, as it briefly stuns any enemy that gets hit within its radius. This stun lasts for a couple of seconds, which gives you a bit of time to make a move on the enemy or do something else entirely. It also depletes mech fuel for the Z-mech, so that's a pretty neat interaction. Overall, this ability is pretty okay, it's not too shabby. Next up is Spin Dash, and this one is pretty cheesy. This ability puts Citron in his ball form briefly before dashing into whatever's in front of him. Anything that Citron hits with this ability loses 75 HP, which is especially crazy when you consider one of the upgrades that we'll cover soon enough. Overall, this ability is ridiculously good, and I don't think I need to tell you why. Finally, we'll be covering Naval Laser, which basically gives Citron his Garden Warfare 2 primary for a few seconds. When activated, Citron switches his primary to a laser that he still can't aim with, but it does great damage in return. The damage dealt goes from 5 to 7 to 14 in that order, and the crit damage follows a similar line of 6 to 9 to 17. Overall, this ability is very good, though it could sometimes put you in a situation where you can't run or use other abilities, so be careful. Overall, it seems to be that Citron is doing pretty good so far. A lot of his kit is good, but can it get better? Well, let's find out. So Citron has a unique set of upgrades to say the very least. A lot of his upgrades relate to speed, damage, or a shield, and while other characters have some upgrades that focus on their kits, Citron has most of his upgrades focusing on those 3 things. So how about we cover them all? We'll start out with his base upgrades, with Peel Out being our first. When equipped, this upgrade gives Citron better movement speed with his shield out. That's it, that's all she wrote. Needless to say, this upgrade is very situational, and I personally don't see a reason to use it. But on the flip side of this coin, we have Freshly Squeezed, which increases Citron's sprinting speed by 30% for a few seconds after getting a Vanquish. This one is also sort of situational, but considering how important Citron's movement is, this upgrade helps out a lot more than you might think. The other 2 upgrades are Quenching Cover and Kinetic Energy. Quenching Cover gives you some ammo whenever your shield gets hit, and when I say whenever, I really do mean it. This upgrade unironically can fill your entire magazine with just a few shots to the shield, it's ridiculous. And as for Kinetic Energy, this upgrade does almost the complete opposite. It gives you shield health when you do a certain amount of damage to enemies. Both upgrades have their uses, but I think Quenching Cover wins just by the idea alone. Next up are his ability upgrades, and we're starting out with the ones for EM Peach. Peachy is up first, and it gives you quite a bit of shield health back whenever you stun an enemy with the ability. And before you ask, yes, this can stack. So if you have no shield and you stun 3 enemies, then those enemies will be in for a nasty surprise. The other upgrade is Peached, which just increases the stun duration for EM Peach when you hit an enemy with it directly. These upgrades are pretty good overall, but Peachy is definitely the one that has more potential usage. Moving on to his Spin Dash upgrades, we're first starting out with the emergency exit. When equipped, this upgrade gives Citron a temporary speed boost for a couple of seconds after using spin dash. It's a very simple upgrade, but it's also a cheap one, so that makes up for it pretty well. Overall, this upgrade's pretty good for the cost. Next up is bowling, which is the upgrade I alluded to earlier. This upgrade is very simple. It just reduces the cooldown time for your spin dash by a few seconds for every enemy you hit. Even in the worst case scenario for this ability, you just wait for the ability to recharge normally. But if you know how to hit a group hard, you pretty much cannot be stopped. I told you guys this ability had cheese. Finally, we have the naval laser upgrades, and first up is Juiced. This upgrade gives naval laser more width, but it also makes every shot a crit. Yes, you heard that right. Forget having decent aim with this thing. If you can point your crosshair at the enemy, they're most definitely screwed. It's a great upgrade. The other one is Pulp Powered, which gives naval laser a longer duration whenever you get a Vanquish. And yes, this upgrade does give you enough time to wipe out Tinky characters like All-Star. So game modes like Ops nearly become trivial with this upgrade. So that's every Citron upgrade. The whole package is overall pretty good, with most upgrades serving a good purpose. So with that being said, let's go ahead and cover a few example builds I made for the character, starting out with my personal build. This build has bowling and critical blow. Yes, I am one of those players. But in my defense, PopCap just made it so easy to use the ability. I simply can't not use it, come on. Next up is an ultimate defense build, with quenching cover, freshly squeezed, and kinetic energy. All of these upgrades combined make Citron a very hard character to counter, as AV wasn't hard enough to counter already. And finally, we have a scaredy Citron build, with health regen delay, freshly squeezed, and emergency exit. Oh yeah, this one doesn't need much more explanation. It is genuinely as annoying as it sounds. So that about wraps up Citron, but we still have one final question to answer. Is Citron worth trying? Well, I would say yes, absolutely. He is unironically one of the best characters in this game, and besides his aiming, I think he's a good character to try if you're new to the game. So with that conclusion, this video ends here. Thank you so much for watching until the end, I really appreciate it. Citron is a fun character to talk about, and I hope you guys got something out of this video. And if you're new around here, and you like what you see, then drop a like, maybe even subscribe, and I'll be seeing you guys in my next video. Peace.